Well, hello everybody, welcome back into the Colored Gemstone Academy. I hope you're doing well. I am your instructor, Paul Deasy, and this is my YouTube channel, Paul Deasy Gemstones. Well, we are back for another edition of the question and answer series. Now this is now April 28th, Wednesday, April 28th. And then we're going to be going to episode 15 of our Q&A series. I can't believe we've done that 15 weeks of it already. You can always go watch them. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, send them in. I'd like to get them on, read yours on the air one of these times. If you have not yet hit the subscribe button, please do that. I know it says subscribe. That can be a scary word. It costs you nothing. You're not going to have to input a credit card. It's completely free. As of this taping, we have almost 1,430 subscribers now. I want to thank each and every one of you who have taken the time to do that. Like the videos if you can. You can watch any of them at your leisure anytime that you want. All right, so this is now episode 15 of our Q&A series, and I'm just going to get right to it and answer some of those questions and comments that you have for me. So I'm going to just read off my computer here. So next one comes from Wayfair Rider. This was a great question. It was from episode 53, which was the episode on grossular garnets. We had a slew of about 2 months of lessons of different varieties of garnet. He asks, or says, I found a beautiful gem quality deep red garnet among calcium silicate skarn. Is the probability of it being grossular much higher because of this, meaning where it was found? Hessonite maybe, or could it still be an aluminum-based garnet despite the prevailing calcium deposits? Now, this is a spectacular question. It truly is. It's impossible to answer with absolute certainty without there being more tests done on the particular stone that you're talking about. Some hessonite stones that I've seen in the past can occur to be pretty deep red in color, but to my eye it always felt like there was still a little bit of orange. It's kind of like when I talk about tanzanite and I say there's a difference between bluish purple and purplish blue. The second color is the dominant color. So when I say some of the red that I've seen in the spessartine, it's more like an orangish red. But that said, who knows? Like when I think of the deepest reds I've ever seen in garnet, it would be undeniably the pyrope garnet. It looks like a ruby and has so many similarities to that stone. But to get back to your original question, could there have been a pyrope, an aluminum-based garnet rather than a calcium-based garnet in that skarn you're talking about? And the answer is, yeah, it actually absolutely could be. Mother Nature does some mysterious things. In the past, I've seen samples of a red garnet in the middle of a diamond crystal. So yeah, things can occur in some places that you wouldn't think of. Skarns tend to be rich in calcium, magnesium, iron, manganese, aluminum, all of those things. So whenever you're going to a mine and you're looking at following a vein of a mine, you can see areas where you'll see turquoise and then areas where you'll see quartz kind of cohabitating in the same place. The bottom line is, whether or not it is a calcium-based or an aluminum-based garnet, and if you love that red color, it sounds to me like you have a fabulous specimen and it is a keeper. But there are ways to get it tested. I probably wouldn't bother with it. You have a beautiful gemstone. Hope that answers your question. Okay, so next up this week we have Andrea H., who was watching episode 57, Fluorite, again. Excuse me, says, I appreciate your education, your information regarding gems. It's all fascinating to me. Always loved geology, gems, fossils, Mother Nature at her best. Well, that is true. And there is never a dull moment in the gem world. I have to confess, I can't count myself among those who was always into geology and gemstones and where they came from. And the truth is, I didn't know much about it. As a kid, I was definitely into science. I remember having my own telescope and, a couple of years maybe after the moon landing, the first, Neil Armstrong on the moon, and looking at planets and seeing the rings around Saturn or looking at the phases of Venus. I remember even my dad, because I think that when they were going to school back in the day, they just thought maybe the rings around Saturn were something that was just an artist rendering in a book. And sure enough, I showed him on that telescope. So I've always been interested in certain things that are science, but I didn't really become bitten by the gemstone bug until I started in the shopping channel business in the early 1990s, actually late 89. And I'm forever fascinated, and no matter how much I learn in the GIA, I have been to mines all over the world. I consider myself very, very fortunate. And I always learn something that I never learned in any book when I'm rubbing shoulders with the miners. But I will keep, anytime that I learn something new, you'll be the next to know. Thank you for the question. I have time, I think, for 2 more questions today because I know I have a long-winded one coming up. There were a lot to unpack in that one question. But this one I wanted to get to first is a little shorter answer, but I apologize. I don't have the notes in front of me. I forget who posed this question. But when I did a lesson and I talked about the poor man's test to tell that a gem is real, and I talked about the lip test and how sensitive the upper lip is to temperature, and how you can take an amethyst or a citrine and put that against your lip and it's going to feel cool, like ice. Not that cold, but definitely cooler than the outside air, compared to glass or plastic, where you're not going to feel any coolness at all. And then I had a subsequent question on that, where somebody asked, can you do that same question to see if something is real with the lip test with turquoise? And the answer is not really. And the reason it's not really, the truth is your turquoise will feel maybe slightly cooler on your lip, but not to the extent like a crystal structured gem like an amethyst or a citrine or a tourmaline or a sapphire or a ruby. So for one, it doesn't have that true like faceted crystal structure that lends that coolness to the top of your lip. But another reason is most turquoise these days is stabilized in some way, shape, or form. And when they're stabilizing turquoise, except for the Zachary method with Sleeping Beauty, they're usually infusing it with a resin or a plastic to fill the pores so that the turquoise doesn't absorb oils from your skin and change color. But when plastic is infused or resins are infused in, they're not going to carry that cold like the crystal will. So the answer is not really, is that going to be working to put turquoise on your lip to see if it's genuine. I hope that answers your question. Okay, I already know this is going to be my last question. We're going to be in trouble with this one because it goes in a lot of different directions, and knowing me and how long-winded I can be, this hopefully I won't go over time, but this will be the last of the questions for this week. It is from Bob Katz. Bob Katz. Anyway, Bob Katz, and this is from episode 54 on Uvarovite garnet, and he says, you worked for QVC. Can I make a suggestion? Ever hear of Shop LC? I think you would be a great asset to the show. Too bad these shows don't ever do gem lesson segments like an hour-long show. It would be fantastic. HSN has been gutted. QVC took over HSN, at least that's what I've heard. And for a while now, you no longer see some of their top jewelry designers on there like Nikki Butler. He was fantastic, and he had been on there for a very long, long time. Also, is there a way to tell if your Australian opal is a black opal or a Boulder opal? Mine's set in a ring, so I can't tell the back of it. It was a gift from my uncle when he went to Australia in the early 70s. This thing doesn't allow for pictures, or I'd show you. Whew! All right, Bob, there's a lot to unpack there. And I think you're a relatively new subscriber, but I've seen you pop up on a couple of other questions that I haven't read yet. But they are great questions, but it's going to be a definitely long-winded answer because you unpacked a lot of things that I do have answers to and some that I have opinions on. So yes, I worked for QVC. Actually, I started off in 1989 in Clearwater, Florida. Actually, St. Petersburg, Florida, working for the Home Shopping Network, which is what it was called at the time. And I did that for 8.5 years. And then I went to QVC shortly after that and started working for them, where I met my wife, Judy Crowell, who was also a host. And we eventually got married, but I spent about 6 years, I want to say, there. Then Judy and I both took a year off and traveled all over the world, including some of the mines that I like to go to. And then we started work at HSN for 3 years. And after that time, I pretty much said, okay, been there, done that with the hosting thing. So that's when both of us went up to Shop NBC, as it was called at the time, to bring a jewelry line. And then Shop NBC became Shop HQ, and then it became Evine, and then it became Shop HQ again. And there was some talk about doing something there again. And I think that Judy and I decided after about 30 years of been there, done that, we don't want to be hosts anymore. Yes, have I heard of Shop LC? I'm very familiar with it. I know the company that's the parent company of that. One of my very good friends, who was one of my fellow of the Three Amigos on Evine when we were doing jewelry shows, he was another vendor. And he is now a host at Shop LC. He's had conversations with me. As I said, I know the people in management there. We're on very good terms, but I just don't really feel like I'm up for being a host again. I kind of like what I'm doing now, kind of easing my way into retirement. Let's see, what else did you say? Oh, okay. Now you said QVC and HSN. Yes, QVC and HSN used to be competitors, and now they're part of one big happy family. At least I assume it's a happy family, under the umbrella of a brand called Qurate, Qurate. And QVC still operates out of Westchester, Pennsylvania, HSN out of St. Petersburg, Florida. I have seen my friends, co-workers, hosts, guests coming from both networks. And again, we remain on good terms. Judy, my wife, is still a health and wellness ambassador for HSN, and she will be doing a product on sometime in April and May, one of the spin bikes. So you asked about the Gemstones and why the things have changed with QVC and HSN. I really do have an answer, or at least an opinion, or a strong opinion on that. Because when COVID hit, not that we all like to blame everything on COVID, that certainly was a game changer. Guests couldn't go in the studios anymore. Everybody's Skyping now. But more importantly, when everybody was locked down in their house and we were, wearing masks and we couldn't go out and we were supposed to shelter in place at home, well, that changed the variety of what the shopping channels can really sell. So there was a lot more things that were comfort things, like home, like food. They would sell food. They would sell pots and pans, cookware. They would sell exercise equipment so you could do it at home if you couldn't go to a gym. They did still do some jewelry, but what you have to remember, we weren't the only ones affected by COVID. The factories all over the world were hit very hard. That's why we had shortages of so many things. The jewelry factories weren't producing any more jewelry, and that went on for months and months and months. So a lot of the shopping channels were just paring down their jewelry airtime so that they could just focus on some of the leftovers that they had. There wasn't a lot of new coming in. The good news is I think that's going to change. I think you're going to see the assortment of jewelry coming back as factories open. I mentioned one of my lessons recently. My good friend Ernie Montoya, who's one of the biggest turquoise dealers in the world, certainly the most important. He was at the Jog Show in Tucson, said it was very active, a lot of people out there spending money on gemstones. So I think you're going to see that come back. All right, and then the last part of your question, I said it was going to be a little bit long-winded in my answer because he really did unpack a lot, but I wanted to give you the full value of the questions that you're asking. So as for the question about the Australian opal, and could it be a black opal? Could it be a bolder opal? The truth is, yes, it could be any of those things. And I understand why you can't tell, because the back of it is, you said you can't see the back of the stone because the setting is there. So that means either you have a sterling silver or gold or another metal covering the entire back of that. Now, I can't tell definitively by looking at the top of your stone. If you wanted to, if you're, the curious gets the better of you, you can always go to a jeweler. They can remove a stone from a setting. They can inspect it. They can tell you what it is. And then they can put it back in its setting. I always say create a relationship with your local jeweler, because sometimes, like the one that we have gotten to know, Judy had a watch she hadn't worn for years. She needed a new battery. He did it. He took the links out, put the battery in for free. But all that said, it could be a black opal. What I would look at in your opal is the body color dark or is the body color white? I think of the white opals like I showed on my cufflinks last week. That has a white body color. Black opals have a darker gray to black body color. So you can be fooled on that a little bit, because in the case of a bolder opal, it's a naturally occurring doublet. That means that there's some ironstone where the opal was mined, and it's attached to the opal. They don't take it off of there. And because it's a dark kind of orangey red colored stone on it, it makes it appear to be a black opal. The same thing can be accomplished if you get a doublet or a triplet. And I talk about that in my opal book, and I think I talk about in one of my lessons on opals. I might even did something on enhancements or treatments, and I talked about what a doublet is, where they actually put a back on it that's either black or dark. And it's not a treatment, it's actually just an assembled stone. They put something dark behind it to make it behave like a black opal at a fraction of the cost. But regardless of what you find out, whether it's a black opal, just a regular play of color opal, or a bolder opals aren't cheap because they're naturally occurring doublets. So I know that might not be the answer that you want, because even if you showed me a picture of it, I would not be able to ascertain from the picture whether it was a doublet, a bolder opal, or a black opal. Well, I hope this answers your questions, and everyone else who's been kind of listening in on the questions. Thank you all so much for your participation in my question and answer series. Next week will probably be the first question and answer series in the month of May. So keep those questions and comments coming. I really do enjoy reading each and every one of them. And if you have not yet done so, please hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. I do these things for free for you. The more people that do subscribe allows me to monetize in different ways, so that you can still get all of these for free. I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for watching, everybody.